Well, thank you for joining us on the Word of Encouragement here on this Tuesday. Today I'd like to go to chapter 22 of the book of Acts. Here we have the testimony of the Apostle Paul after he is apprehended in the temple. He had gone back to Rome. He knew that he was going to be facing a great crisis, and it certainly was exactly what he thought and others that had prophesied, that he was going to face persecution when he went back to Jerusalem. But he felt that God wanted him there. And so after he was apprehended, he was taken to the Roman leadership there in the fortress of Antonia, and he asks if he can speak to the people that were there. And so he stood on the stairs and he spoke in the Hebrew tongue, which was a surprise unto to the captain that had taken him. And he says in verse 1, "Men, brethren, and fathers, hear ye my defense, which I make now unto you." And when they heard that he spake in the Hebrew tongue to them, they kept the more silence. And he saith, "I am verily a man which am a Jew, born in Tarsus." And he goes on to tell about his background, his pedigree, that he was with the law, zealous toward God. "And I persecuted this way," speaking of Christianity, "unto the death." And he speaks about what happened on the road to Damascus. I'm not going to go into the whole story. I think you know the gist of it. But my point is this. The Apostle Paul did exactly the right thing when he faced difficulty. Instead of trying to run from it, instead of trying to protect himself, he goes instead and opens up and gives his testimony about what God had done for him and the fact that he had become a follower of Jesus Christ, that he believed that he was the Messiah, and that God had turned him around, and that God had caused him to have the ministry that he had. Now, in doing so, he knew good and well that this would not go well with the Hebraic leadership there, and the Sanhedrin and all would react, especially the Pharisees, to this. But God was able to use this as a first step in many good things happening, as difficult as it was for the Apostle Paul. Now, I bring this up because we have a tendency, as the pressure comes upon us, as we're dealing this month with Pride Month, and we're having to navigate that, and we have things said about Bible-believing Christians, and there are just all kinds of pressures to be politically correct. And we find ourselves maybe having a tendency to moderate what we say. Well, I want to encourage you. What people need to hear is the simple truth of how God changed your life. Truth that's been a blessing to you. In fact, it's good with the people that you work with or around. Talk about how good God has been. And if at all possible, do like the Apostle Paul. Talk about your salvation testimony. That'll encourage you, first of all. It will give you courage once you do it, because the Spirit of God will empower you. And many times it will open the door to actually preach, teach, give the gospel. And so I think we have here a wonderful example of how we should respond when the pressure is there. Let's don't back down. Let's don't hide who we are. Very kindly, we just need to share who we are and realize that this opportunity, whatever might come up, is the opportunity to help reach people and to let the love of Christ be seen through us and to give the truth about what God did in our own lives. So let's remember what Paul did. When the pressure hit, he gave his testimony. And as we see all that's going on around us, let's look for ways that we can tell people how good God is and what he has done for us.